I'd like to thank Senator Rick Scott, the ranking member of this subcommittee, for agreeing to work with me in a bipartisan way on the critical issues that are so important to workers, businesses, and families in both of our states and across the country. And I look forward to a productive partnership. I'd also like to thank Chair Cantwell and Ranking Member Wicker for their tremendous leadership and for agreeing to establish this crucial subcommittee at a time when travel, tourism, and hospitality, they need more support than ever before. Travel and tourism related industries drive job creation and economic growth in states across America, especially in Nevada, where these industries and the workers they employ are absolutely essential to our state's prosperity. From the excitement and energy of the Las Vegas Strip, to the exquisite outdoor recreation opportunities at Lake Tahoe, to the magnificent engineering feat that is the Hoover Dam, and the vast and pristine public lands throughout our state, people love to visit Nevada. Prior to the pandemic in 2019, about 55 million people visited the Silver State, which was a record setting figure. In the Las Vegas area alone, direct visitor spending reached almost $37 billion, directly supported more than 242,000 workers in the tourism, leisure, and hospitality industries. Jobs in those sectors account for about 9% of all U.S. jobs, a major slice of the nation's economy. And in Nevada, they employ about a quarter of our workforce. With tourism as our lifeblood, this pandemic has hit Nevada particularly hard. It brought our travel and tourism having economy screeching to a halt and decimated the jobs that these industries support. In April 2020, the unemployment rate in Nevada was the highest in our state's history and the worst in the nation. It skyrocketed to almost 30%. I want to repeat that, 30% unemployment. They were unemployed through no fault of their own. It was all because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and that contributed to the worst economic downturn in the tourism industry that we have ever experienced in my state of Nevada. Through PPP loans, the Employee Retention Tax Credit, direct aid to restaurants and live entertainment, and unemployment relief, Congress has worked to support tourism businesses and workers during this difficult period. But far more needs to be done. Now it's time to bring this critical industry back to its thriving pre-pandemic economic status. I intend to use this subcommittee to find bipartisan pathways and solutions to do just that. We're going to get Americans and the world traveling again. Today's inaugural hearing, titled The State of Travel and Tourism During COVID, will examine the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on the travel and tourism industry, with a particular focus on hotels, conventions, and the broader hospitality industry. We'll discuss regional impacts of the pandemic on tourism-heavy economies like Nevada's and Florida's, and those communities disproportionately affected by COVID-19's resulting economic downturn. Here today, both virtually and in person, we have a panel of wonderful witnesses to share their expertise, provide insight and recommendations, and take questions from members of the subcommittee. We will hear from witnesses representing the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, MGM Resorts International, U.S. Travel Association, the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association. From this hearing, I hope the subcommittee will gain a robust understanding of the current needs of our nation's travel and tourism industry so that we can craft the most effective and targeted solutions to revive our economy and support the travel and tourism workforce. The travel and tourism industry has many components. So while the focus of today is primarily hotels, conventions, and the broader hospitality industry, from restaurants to casinos, Ranking Member Scott and I will ensure this subcommittee hears from key stakeholders across the board. Over the next few months, we'll hear from our airports and others about the pandemic's impacts on international travel. We'll examine the outdoor recreation economy and ecotourism. We'll raise the voices of small businesses, hospitality workers, and the live entertainment workforce. And we'll chart a path towards the future. Thank you all again for being here today. I look forward to hearing each of you share your experiences and expertise with us. Now I'll turn it over to Ranking Member Scott for his opening statement and then introduce our witnesses so they can provide testimony to the panel. Senator Scott.
Well, first, I want to thank Chair Rosen. We both come from tourism states, and we know the importance of making sure that we have robust tourism. I remember being at, I think it's supposed to be the largest tourism convention or event, supposedly in the world, down in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and Las Vegas had an unbelievably beautiful space there, and they presented Nevada really well. So it's a great state, and it's a great place to take a vacation. I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here today and sharing their experiences. I'd like to thank somebody from Florida, Carol Dover, who's the president and CEO of the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, for being with us today. I finished a couple years ago as governor of Florida, and I worked hand in hand with Carol. Tourism is a big deal in our state, and she's truly a champion for our tourism industry in our state. I want to thank Chair Cantwell and Ranking Member Wicker for giving us the opportunity to do this. It's an honor to lead this subcommittee with Senator Rosen. I look forward to the important work we're going to do to drive our nation's tourism and trade sectors to economic success. And as you heard from Chair Rosen, some of our states have really gotten hurt because of what's happened with the pandemic. During my time as governor, we invested actually quite a bit of state money and worked on growing tourism. We went from about 80 million tourists a year to my last year, 126 million tourists. But of course, last year, the state of Florida's tourism, like all other states, was down significantly. We shattered records, tourism records, and it creates a lot of jobs. And these visitors, they support our small businesses, they fuel our job growth. They help increase our state and local investments in the environment and transportation and public safety and education. I said what happens in Florida is people come to visit, and I'm sure the same thing happens in Nevada. People come to visit and say, this is a pretty nice place. I think I'll move here. I'll build my business here. So it's a real driver for economic development, I think, in both of our states. Our state also has 15 seaports. It's the gateway to Latin America. Florida's become a hub for businesses all across the nation for import and export. We try to move all the business we can out of California over to Florida. The goods that flow through Florida airports and seaports have grown to $154 billion a year due to our focus on building international trade relationships. In 2016, exports from Florida supported an estimated 232,000 American jobs. So these are the tourism is big jobs. The trade jobs are big jobs with our ports. We invested in my 8 years about $1.4 billion just in our ports. I know that all this pandemic has impacted every one of us, our families, and all of us have tried to figure out how to deal with this, keep everybody safe, our families safe, our businesses safe, and our employees safe. I've heard from a lot of small businesses around my state that rely on the tourism industry and have been absolutely devastated by the pandemic. Well, I'm glad Florida's open for business. Our businesses are open, our schools are open. The uncertainty of when the tourism industry will reopen in other states, in communities across the country, has clearly impacted those states, and it's even impacted us. I know everybody's working incredibly hard to keep their businesses going and get back in business and be able to employ everybody again, and I hope that happens quickly. As our nation works to recover from the coronavirus and get our economy back on track, I'm going to be doing everything I can with Senator Rosen to support the tourism industry in Florida and across the country. I'm also very focused on what happens in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was devastated by Hurricane Maria, and then they had the earthquake, and now COVID-19. We worked hard to make sure there's good aid for Puerto Rico's recovery. I've been working on a lot of bills, like Senator Rosen has. I have my bipartisan Fly Safe Canine COVID Detection Act with Senator Sinema, which directs the TSA to conduct a feasibility study on the use of canine units, which have been reportedly effective in detecting COVID, and hopefully will provide an opportunity to make people feel safer flying. We got to get people back in the air for all of our states. We also have a bipartisan bill, Fly Safe and Healthy Act, with Chair Cantwell to enable a temperature check pilot program at airports. And today I introduced the careful resumption under Improved Safety Enhancement Act, or the Cruise Act, with Senator Sullivan and Senator Rubio to help our cruise industry restart and support the many businesses in our communities that rely on the success of the cruise industry. I guess you don't have a lot of cruises, but you have a lot of people at
They cruise up and down the Las Vegas
Yeah,
Strip.
that's right. And you've got a lot of water.
We do.
People cruise on. So it's been really frustrating. The cruise industry has been waiting for months for updated guidance from the CDC, and I think it's wrong what's happened. We've got to give the cruise industry the terms, the rules, and they'll reopen safely. I know that industry wants to do it safely. It's an important job created for us. So I want to make sure that happens. We're going to do everything we can, and I look forward to working with all my colleagues to grow tourism, not just in Nevada, not just in Florida, but even in beautiful states like Mississippi.
Now, thank you, Senator Scott. And I would like to now introduce here in person our ranking member, Senator Wicker.
Thank you, Senator Rosen and Senator Scott. And Senator Scott, I share that sentiment with you because we have a number of tourism opportunities, not the least of which is the National Civil Rights Trail and the National Blues Trail, which more and more people are coming to visit, as well as our other more traditional tourism sites. But thank you both for holding this hearing today to hear industry perspectives on the state of the travel and tourism industry. This is a great topic for the new Tourism, Trade, and Export Promotion Subcommittee. I expect this committee will be very busy, and I look forward to participating. The travel and tourism industry is a key pillar of the American economy. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, this industry supported roughly 16 million jobs and generated $1.1 trillion in consumer spending, accounting for over $2.5 trillion in total economic output. COVID-19 has devastated the industry perhaps more than any other economic sector in the United States. Nearly 40% of the total U.S. jobs lost during the pandemic have been in leisure and hospitality employment. During the worst point of this crisis, unemployment in the travel and tourism industry reached over 50%, more than double the national unemployment rate at the height of the Great Depression. Congress has sought to provide much needed support to help the industry recover. The CARES Act provided urgently needed relief to travel and tourism businesses in the form of grants, emergency loans, and lines of credit. The fifth COVID relief bill, which passed in December as part of the FY21 Appropriations Act, expanded the industry's access to many of these CARES Act relief programs. More recently, the American Rescue Plan Act provided $750 million for the Economic Development Administration to help communities impacted by the loss of travel and tourism. Additionally, the bill included a $28.6 billion restaurant revitalization fund for restaurants modeled after the Bipartisan Restaurants Act, which I drafted with my friend Senator Sinema, a member of this subcommittee. The Small Business Administration has been tasked with standing up the restaurant fund, and the SBA may start allocating grants very, very soon. Federal resources should help shore up the travel and tourism sector, but I recognize the impacts of the pandemic will be long lasting. I hope our witnesses today will update the committee on the current status of the travel and tourism industry, how the increasing availability of COVID-19 vaccines affects opportunities for recovery, and ways the public-private sectors can partner to help restore demand for travel as the public health situation continues to improve. It may take years to restore travel and tourism to its pre-pandemic levels, but I hope not. I'm hopeful that this subcommittee can identify bipartisan opportunities to help the sector heal and prosper much sooner than that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Wicker, and appreciate you being, well, chairman and ranking member. Right now, I'd like to welcome via WebEx Senator Cortez Masto. She's my partner in representing Nevada in the Senate. She's a tireless advocate for travel and tourism industry. And I'd like to welcome her to introduce to the subcommittee our witness from Las Vegas. Senator Cortez Masto, I turn it to you to introduce Mr. Hill.
Chair Rosen, thank you so much. Ranking Member Scott, I really appreciate the opportunity to join you today. It is great to be back in the Commerce Committee that I enjoyed serving on when I first came to the Senate. This committee does great work promoting our science, transportation, technology sectors, and gives Congress the ability to hold hearings on important sectors like this one on tourism. As you know, and as you've stated, tourism is vital to the economic health of our country. I so appreciate you bringing these experts to talk about the importance of the travel industry to Nevada and to the nation as a whole. All of these participants are great partners and leaders in the travel industry, which has been so hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, and our tourism economy will need our full support as the nation recovers. That's why I've been working in a bipartisan way on the Hospitality and Commerce Job Recovery Act with Senator Kramer, along with the Bipartisan STEP Act with Senators Blunt and Klobuchar, and the Travel Act that I'm about to introduce to help elevate tourism at the Department of Transportation. With that, I appreciate the chance to be here and introduce Steve Hill. Steve has been an economic champion in Nevada for many years. Since being named the CEO and president of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority in 2018, Steve has done a great job of creating more opportunities for Southern Nevada to be even more inviting place for our visitors every year. From completion of the convention center expansion to the innovative people mover system, and now weathering this health and economic crisis, Steve has been a solid and steady hand in working to bring us out of this critical challenge to our state and local economy. I appreciate his partnership on many of the legislative efforts that we have worked on as a Nevada delegation. And again, I appreciate the committee bringing his expertise in for this hearing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cortez Masto. That was a very kind introduction. And thank you, Chair Rosen, Ranking Member Scott, for inviting me to be here today. I don't know if it is appropriate to congratulate you on the formation of this subcommittee, but it seems like the right thing to do. And so I would like to congratulate you and also add the appreciation of our industry for doing so. We have great supporters in Senator Cortez Masto and Senator Rosen. I know they represent Nevada well and our tourism industry well. In the Senate, we have really appreciated being able to work with them on much of the legislation that they've sponsored on behalf of the travel industry. So thank you very much. And I'm going to emphasize really some of the things that you have already said. Our industry is central to the U.S. economy. It is a big part of the U.S. economy, and it is critical to the recovery of the U.S. economy. As you mentioned, at full strength, our industry supports 16 million jobs in the United States, 1 in every 9 jobs. It's one of the 7th largest industries in the country, and it was certainly the industry most affected by the pandemic. When our industry is suffering, it's large enough and has a big enough impact that it's felt throughout all of our communities. It affects all of our suppliers and service providers. And that's from those that you think of initially, from restaurants and local attractions, and also to cab drivers and laundries and the construction workers who set up trade shows. The list goes on. Tourism is a significant driver in every state, but this is particularly true in Nevada, where, as Senator Rosen mentioned, hospitality supports 1 in 4 Nevada jobs, 2.5 times the national average. The Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority is a unique organization in that we are the only entity in a major city in the United States to serve as both the destination marketing organization as well as the Convention and Visitors Bureau. As with many convention centers throughout the country, our mission certainly expanded over the last year, and it includes doing what we could to help the community respond to the pandemic. We're the state's largest COVID test center. We are currently the state's largest vaccine site. We are a FEMA distribution center. We provided space for courtrooms, for eviction assistance, we have space and the community needed space, and we were happy and proud to be a part of all of those efforts. We recently purchased the Las Vegas monorail system after it was forced to close due to the pandemic. We needed to preserve this important transportation system. And through the last year, we finished the construction of our 1.4 million square foot expansion. And you may have seen last week showcased the first commercial application of Elon Musk, the Boring Company's innovative transportation system, which now runs underneath the campus of our convention center. We are looking forward to both recovery and a return to prosperity, and we do hope to be able to speed that up. People in this industry need that. They need their jobs back. Our state and local governments need this industry to recover, to generate the tax revenue they count on to provide services. Our customers need to travel, frankly. They need to see their family and friends they haven't seen in the last year. They need to meet a potential new customer, to experience a new culture, or frankly, just to set aside what's happened over the last year and get away for a few days. The first step part of the recovery, as you all mentioned, will be moving beyond the health crisis, and continuing the vaccination process is the key to making that happen. We need to get to the point now where socially distancing is no longer necessary. Like many destinations, Las Vegas doesn't work well without a crowd. And we are optimistic that we are on the cusp of that. We think that has the ability to happen soon. But once beyond the health crisis, our industry will be faced with a situation that is roughly equivalent to the depths of the Great Recession. That will be where we are once we get past the health crisis and are just simply dealing with the economic fallout as a result. Domestic and leisure travel will recover first, and it's already doing so. We're seeing strength there. But business travel and international travel will certainly take longer. The LVCVA receives a good portion of our funding through a fixed percentage of room tax. It's a good indicator of the health of our tourism and hospitality industry. Typically, we would receive about $300 million a year. In our current fiscal year, which ends in June, we will receive about $100 million, so about a third of our normal revenue. We are projecting next year that we will receive about 70% of our normal room tax revenue. So we will show improvement, but it's only about halfway to where we need to be over the next 12 months. Because the LVCVA is involved in a number of ways, I'll just mention that transportation and transportation infrastructure in all forms will be a key to recovering fully and having real growth from there. I was honored to serve on the National Advisory Committee on Travel and Tourism Infrastructure 2 years ago. The report we issued then was relatively brief and contained a focused set of recommendations. Key recommendation was to create a national travel infrastructure strategy. We have a national freight plan, but we do not have a full national travel plan. Corridors of regional significance need to be a focus of that strategy. In the West and in Nevada, our state, I-15, is one such corridor. It affects states that it runs directly through from California to Montana, as well as neighboring states such as Wyoming and Colorado. And the importance of that corridor can be seen in the makeup of this committee, where half of this committee represents states affected by I-15. So we look forward to working with you, Chair Rosen, on the formation of an I-15 caucus in Congress, and we thank you for your help with that. And again, I would like to thank you, Ranking Member Scott, all the members of the committee for the opportunity to be before you here today. Thank you for all you have done and all you will do for the travel industry.
Next is Jorge Perez, Regional Portfolio President at MGM Resorts International. Mr. Perez oversees the strategic direction for 8 of MGM's resorts properties. Mr. Perez is an industry veteran with 25 years of experience in the hospitality industry. Mr. Perez, I recognize you for your opening remarks.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairwoman Rosen, Chairwoman Cantwell, Ranking Member Scott, and Ranking Member Wicker, and members of the subcommittee. As you mentioned, my name is Jorge Perez, and I'm the Regional Portfolio President. I oversee the 8 regional domestic properties for MGM Resorts outside of Las Vegas. And I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony on behalf of our organization and to share some of our experiences during this incredibly challenging year. MGM Resorts International is a global entertainment company with 29 unique hotels and gaming destinations across 8 states and Macau. Last year was one of the most difficult years ever faced by our industry, by our company, and by our employees. MGM first felt the impacts of the pandemic at our properties in Macau, which closed in February 2020. And shortly thereafter, in March 2020, our regional properties were closed, and then eventually our Las Vegas properties, leaving the Strip closed for the very first time in its history. Like many, we faced a number of difficult decisions, including having to furlough a significant portion of our workforce. But during this time of great hardship, our company and team members sought ways to demonstrate care and compassion for one another and for the most impacted in our communities. We provided extended health benefits for our employees and their families. We dispersed over $15.5 million to help employees during the pandemic via our Employee Emergency Grant Fund. And within days of shutting down, we donated hundreds of thousands of meals to people in need. MGM also helped to procure much needed PPE for our medical professionals, including masks, gowns, and gloves. We continue to focus on our commitment to the communities that have welcomed us, to give generously to our neighbors, and embody our core value of embracing humanity every day. While it has been a year of hardship, it has also been a year of innovation and change. When we reopened our properties, we drastically overhauled our operations. MGM implemented comprehensive protocols via our 7-point health and safety plan, which included installation of plexiglass dividers, hand washing stations across our resorts, digital innovations, including touchless menus in our restaurants and our bars, the ability for our guests to check in utilizing a mobile phone, enhanced HVAC protocols, temperature testing for team members and our guests, and on-site rapid COVID-19 tests for our events, just to name a few. As the world strives to return to normal, we appreciate the continued leadership and support of the federal government. The coronavirus relief bills passed by Congress helped so many around the country. Our furloughed employees through extended unemployment benefits, our small business partners through the Paycheck Protection Program, and MGM through the Employee Retention Tax Credit, which helped provide extended health benefits for our employees and their families. Notwithstanding these efforts, the country's travel and tourism industries and our workers have been hit disproportionately hard. Nationwide, as mentioned earlier, travel spending was down $500 billion, costing the U.S. economy about $1.1 trillion. At the current pace, the travel industry is not expected to fully recover until 2025, but we are hopeful the recovery will arrive much sooner. There are key political initiatives that can help our industry achieve a speedier recovery and the nearly 16 million American workers it employed before the pandemic. One of the biggest policy priorities for the travel and tourism industry is the bipartisan legislation introduced by Senator Catherine Cortez Masto and Senator Kevin Cramer, the Hospitality and Commerce Job Recovery Act of 2021, which provides various tax credits to stimulate our industry. Additionally, would assist the convention and trade show sector, which was disproportionately impacted and is so crucial to the industry's recovery. We also welcome the safe and science-based easing of government restrictions, which will permit us to bring back more of our world-renowned amenities to a greater number of guests, allowing us to bring back more of our employees. At MGM, we understand the need to remain diligent and maintain our focus on the well-being of our employees and our guests. Vaccination is a critically important tool in helping to end the pandemic and accelerate our community's economic recovery. We are committed to doing anything we can to help get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible by removing barriers to access and bringing vaccination clinics directly to our employees. It has been a difficult year, but there is great reason for cautious optimism, and we're starting to see signs of recovery. We at MGM Resorts await the ability to welcome and entertain the world without restriction and to help our guests celebrate life to its fullest. Thank you for the opportunity to present testimony today.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Testifying next is Tori Emerson Barnes, Executive Vice President of Public Affairs and Policy at the U.S. Travel Association. Ms. Barnes leads the U.S. Travel Association's government relations, policy development, communications, marketing, and research teams. Ms. Barnes is here with us today in person, and I recognize you for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair Rosen, Ranking Member Scott, and members of the subcommittee. Good afternoon. I'm Tori Emerson Barnes, Executive Vice President of Public Affairs and Policy for the U.S. Travel Association. We're the only association that represents all sectors of the travel industry, and I'm very happy to be here in person and grateful for the leadership that you're putting forward here today. Before the pandemic, $1.1 trillion in travel spending generated $2.6 trillion economic impact and supported 16 million American jobs. This came to a halt at the onset of the pandemic. Last year, travel spending fell 42%, costing the economy $500 billion in lost travel spend. International inbound visitation declined 76%, and business travel spending fell 70%. Additionally, 5.6 million travel-supported jobs were lost, accounting for 65% of all jobs lost to the pandemic. At the state level, Nevada, Florida, and Washington state suffered travel spending declines of more than 40%. Travel spending fell 26% in Mississippi. Currently, the travel industry is expected to take 5 years to recover from this crisis, and that's far too long to wait. While we expect domestic leisure travel to recover more quickly, a full rebound is not certain, and it won't make up for losses in other segments. Professional meetings and events, which are the travel industry's largest generator of spending revenue, are still restricted in many states. This sector is projected to take 4 years to recover. And with our borders still closed to much of the world, international travel to the U.S. will take as many as 5 years to return to pre-pandemic levels. With the uncertainty around reopening, it could be even longer. U.S. travel has identified 4 key priorities to restore travel demand, accelerate rehiring, and shorten the recovery timeline. First, we must safely and quickly reopen international travel. We have the right protections in place to safely reopen, but we don't have clear public health benchmarks or a definitive timeline to return to open our borders. U.S. travel has urged the Biden administration to develop by this May a roadmap and a timeline for lifting entry restrictions with the goal of reopening international travel by July. We can start by establishing public health corridors between the U.S. and other low-risk countries such as the United Kingdom. Second, the CDC should approve clear guidance that states and localities can use to lift restrictions and safely restart professional meetings and events. Nearly all sectors of the economy have clear guidelines to allow them to reopen amid the pandemic. Business meetings are distinct from other mass gatherings due to the level of control that can be implemented and should not remain closed while the rest of the economy is given the green light to reopen. Third, Congress should enact the Hospitality and Commerce Jobs Recovery Act to spur demand and accelerate rehiring. This bill would increase travel demand among low to middle income families by providing targeted and temporary refundable tax credits to travel while also helping to boost demand, spending, and rehiring. The bill would also provide refundable tax credits to encourage professional meetings and events to restart. Further, Oxford Economics estimates that enacting this bill would shorten the recovery timeline from 5 years to just 3, while creating an incremental 1.5 million jobs and generating nearly $600 billion in spending. Fourth, Congress should provide temporary emergency funding for Brand USA, America's destination marketing organization. Over the last 7 years, Brand USA's marketing efforts has generated a 26-to-1 return on investment for the U.S. economy. However, the drastic decline in ESTA fee collections due to international travel restrictions, combined with scarce private sector contributions during the economic crisis, have decimated the program's funding. If Brand USA is unable to continue its important work, international travel recovery will be severely limited. Specific policies can also be implemented to improve the industry's long-term competitiveness and ensure that we come back stronger than ever. These policies include passing the Visit America Act, which Senator Sullivan introduced last year, to elevate travel leadership in the federal government. This would strengthen the Commerce Department's role in coordinating federal travel policies and set consistent national goals and strategies to boost travel exports. Finally, investing in our country's infrastructure will help facilitate travel and better prepare us to welcome back visitors from around the world. By prioritizing infrastructure investments now, the U.S. can emerge from the pandemic and rebuild the travel industry with stronger, more connected systems than ever before. We need the federal government to enact the right policies to ensure all sectors of travel can recover as quickly as possible, and any delay in reopening any segment will only hurt our economy further. Thank you again for inviting the travel industry to testify today on such a devastating economic impact of the pandemic, and I welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Our final witness is Carol Dover, President and CEO of the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association. Ms. Dover also serves as a member of several boards, including the Board of Directors for the National Restaurant Association, Council of State Restaurant Associations, and International Society of Hotel Association Executives. Ms. Dover, I recognize you via WebEx for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Chair Cantwell, Ranking Member Wicker, and Subcommittee Chair Rosen, and Ranking Member Scott, and other distinguished members for the opportunity to be here to represent Florida's hospitality industry. For more than 26 years, I have led the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, FRLA, which represents over 10,000 members from the biggest names in hotels, restaurants, theme parks, to small independent operators and suppliers. Hospitality and tourism is the largest industry in Florida, and it is the economic engine of our state. In 2019, a record-setting 131 million visitors added nearly $97 billion to Florida's economy. Tourism was Florida's largest employer with over 1.5 million employees. Before COVID, our nearly $112 billion hospitality industry was booming, with hundreds of new hotels, thousands of new restaurants, and we were on track to set new records. When COVID hit, we were shell-shocked. More than 62% of Florida's hospitality employees were furloughed or laid off. Hotels, restaurants, bars, cruise lines, theme parks shut down, air travel stopped, business conferences and large events were canceled. The FRLA went into overdrive to help our members survive, interpreting executive orders and serving as an information clearinghouse. We helped our workers get PPE and other COVID supplies. We were heavily engaged with our state and federal leaders and are grateful for the support of Senators Scott and Rubio. We were blessed to work closely with Governor DeSantis by assisting to create guidelines and safety protocols to get our industry reopened. There were many creative solutions that our industry embarked upon, from opening grocerants to putting up dining tables in parking lots. Alcohol to go became a critical revenue source for restaurants, and we were working now with the Florida legislature to try to make that permanent. We've worked with our national association partners on federal relief packages that have been critical to our survival. Our industry is also facing historic workforce challenges. Although we're allowed to operate at 100% capacity in Florida, we can't find staff. Simply put, we're competing with state and federal unemployment benefits. Workers tell us that they make too much money on unemployment to return to work. So businesses are forced to limit capacity, shorten their hours without adequate staff to serve guests. Florida is open for business, but we're desperate for workers. COVID has decimated the U.S. tourism industry, which suffered more than $500 billion in pandemic-related losses. Half of the U.S. hotel rooms are projected to remain empty this year, and hotel employment will not come back until at least 2023. Business travel, the single largest source of hotel revenue, will remain down 85%, and it's going to take years to recover. Thousands of hotels have closed and have been foreclosed. Florida had the second highest hotel job loss in the nation behind California. Restaurants have also been shattered. From nationwide shutdowns to ban on indoor dining to misleading claims about the safety of restaurants, 2020 ended with total sales that were $240 billion less than projections. Nationally, more than 8 million restaurant employees were laid off or furloughed, and 600,000 of them were in Florida. More than 110,000 restaurants closed permanently, including over 10,000 of those in Florida. Nationally, the restaurant industry lost nearly 2.5 million jobs. We are hopeful that PPP tax credits and the recently passed Restaurant Revitalization Fund have been huge victories. The RRF will provide $28.6 billion in grants for restaurants who desperately need it. Thank you, Ranking Member Wicker and Committee Member Sinema, for your bipartisan work in creating the Restaurant Act to keep us open. Travel, tourism, and the hospitality industries have faced the worst years in history. In Florida, we understand emergencies, but there was no playbook for COVID-19, and nothing has ever tested us like this. We love creating memorable experiences for guests that keep coming back, but we need for them to be able to come back. International visitors, cruises, business travel, we are working to rebuild this industry that we love so dearly. We are hospitality strong, but we have no problem asking for your help, and we still desperately need your support as we rebuild. Thank you, Chair, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Well, thank you so much for your opening remarks, and I really appreciate everyone's thoughtful opening remarks, because Senator Scott and I believe that we must get Americans traveling again. And so, as we've discussed several times, travel and tourism, of course, are the lifeblood of Nevada's economy. COVID-19, like you all have said, has taken a toll on our workers across this nation, on our businesses, and on our communities. But with more Americans getting vaccinated and the CDC giving the green light for safe travel, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But to fully recover and bring back the jobs lost, the industry, we must bring it back to pre-pandemic levels. We need to get Americans and the world traveling again. That means making sure that people from across the country and across the globe know that our tourism destinations, well, they are open for business. So, Mr. Perez, can you talk about the importance of out-of-state and international travelers to MGM's success and that of its workforce, and I would say all of our hotels and the success of its workforce, please?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Let me start off first with the regional properties. We're in 7 different states, some in the Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, and down Senator Wicker's neck of the woods down in Mississippi. For those properties, most of our business comes from an hour's drive, and we were a bit more insulated, barring the closure, obviously, but we were a bit more insulated than Las Vegas, because the barriers of travel were just easier. You could jump in your car and not have to deal with airfare and that sort of thing. Las Vegas, and I'll parallel that too with, we do have 2 semi-destination resorts, one of which is in Biloxi, Mississippi. That property also was hampered more as compared to the other 7 as an example. It behaved a little bit more like Las Vegas. And also Borgata in Atlantic City had similar characteristics to recovery than Las Vegas, but nowhere near as devastating. To your point, and you've heard the testimony from the panelists, the getting customers comfortable with air travel primarily is paramount, and it's going to take some time to get international travel to come back in earnest, particularly in Las Vegas, which is vitally important. We know those customers stay longer. They enjoy our restaurants, they enjoy our casinos, they enjoy our shows. They spend quite a bit on retail. and they're vitally important to the Nevada and Las Vegas economy. So anything that we can do certainly to reduce those barriers would be incredibly helpful, especially for Las Vegas.
Thank you. Mr. Hill, I'd like to ask you a similar question, but really about our conventions. We know that conventions, business travel is the lifeblood of not just Las Vegas, but so many other cities across the country. So how do you feel about what can we do to bring that ecotourism back? What do we need and its importance to our communities?
Thank you, Chair Rosen. Ranking Member Scott earlier mentioned the connection between tourism and economic development. And I would just add that really tourism is economic development too. And it brings money in from outside of our state into our state. It creates those 26% of the jobs in Nevada. It is the economic engine for our state, and domestic and international tourists are what make that possible. That, a year ago or a little longer ago, when we were trying to get from 87% room occupancy to 90%, that concept seemed maybe not as important as what we went through when we shut down for 10 weeks and didn't have any visitors in Nevada. And as you pointed out, suffered the worst unemployment rate of any state in history during that period of time. So it is, our domestic and international travelers are what make this state go, and we need to do everything we can to allow them to return, and I know everyone is. From a meetings and convention perspective, we're excited to have, I think, the first large trade show in the United States returning to our convention center in early June, the World of Concrete, by Informa, a publicly traded firm that is one of the biggest customers of Las Vegas. It's a show that typically has 50, 60,000 attendees. We don't think it will be that size, but it will be a major show. And we look forward not only to that show returning, but it serving as evidence and an example of how to do this right. And we're excited about that. International visitation is a big component of visitation, both from a business traveler standpoint as well as a leisure traveler. We enjoy about 15% in a normal year visitation from our international fans, and that has been almost completely shut down and has not really started to recover at this point. And as Ms. Barnes mentioned, working to get those visitors back, working on a method so that they can have confidence in their travel plans and be able to confidently make those trips, we think is critically important.
Thank you. And now recognize Ranking Member Scott.
Thank you, Chair Rosen. I want to thank each of the witnesses for your testimony. Ms. Stover, in your written testimony, you state that the travel and tourism industry is facing historic labor shortages, which could significantly restrict the industry from recovering from this severe downturn. Can you share the reasons behind this? Would you be able to give you some examples from your members, as well as what they've done to mitigate this issue? And just go ahead and talk about some of the challenges your members are facing with regard to labor shortages.
Yes, thank you very much, Senator Scott. So as I stated in my other statement, that we're in competition with our unemployment system. So many people are making more money staying home, and we're having a really tough time getting people to even want to apply for jobs. We've been hosting job fairs. Some of our members are even offering bonuses, and people are still not showing up to apply for the jobs. Just a couple of examples, Senator, that we're hearing from our members. I have a member yesterday who was telling me that they haven't had their garbage picked up in almost a week. And, and so this is bigger than just the hotel and restaurant industry. The waste management industry, they don't have drivers. We got notice from our food distribution companies and our beverage companies that they may not be receiving their products in a timely manner because they too don't have enough drivers applying for jobs. So one of the things that we are in hopes is that we can find between both state and federal. Clearly, unemployment is important for many people, but there are so many jobs available right now that if we could go back to a system where you used to have to show that you had applied and been turned down for several jobs, 3 jobs, I believe is what it was in Florida, that if we could reverse some of those mandates, then I believe that we could begin to see people want to go back to work. So we are desperate, and anything that you all can do in Congress to help us relieve this burden. I hear from my colleagues all across the country that this is not just a Florida issue, that it's everywhere. So thank you for asking and allowing me the opportunity to talk to you about our very critical labor shortage.
So Ms. Dover, so if an employer tells an employee that they have a job openings, and my understanding nationwide, we have 7.4 million job openings. If an employer says they have a job opening, does the employee are they able to continue on unemployment, or are they required to come back to work?
Well, they're not required, Senator, my understanding, to come back to work. They can make the decision. And what we're trying to also do education to many of the people who are not coming back to work is to remind them that these jobs will not be available forever. I mean, you've heard us all today on the panel talk about the need to rebound, and we will rebound. We're a resilient country and we will rebound. But one day, these jobs that people are turning down won't be available anymore. So we're reminding people to take these jobs while they're available. Unemployment in Florida is already down to a little over 4%. So it's not long before we're going to be in a very low unemployment and nearly an unemployable. So hopefully we can get people to see that we have great jobs available. Florida is the tourism mecca. And we have just, hopefully people will see the importance of coming back to work.
Thank you, Ms. Dover. Ms. Barnes, we've seen the cruise industry at a standstill under the current CDC restrictions with no timeline in place for return. What impact has this had, not only on the cruise industry, but throughout the travel and tourism industries?
Thank you for the question. We very much are supportive of the legislation that you and Senator Sullivan introduced today, along with Senator Rubio, because we really do think that the entire industry needs to have clear guidelines on how to reopen with a timeline and a date certain to do so. And really, we are normally used to welcoming over 13 million travelers via cruise ship annually to the United States, and the impact that has on ports and destinations throughout the country, restaurants, attractions, folks that are being able to sell gifts for their families at those ports and in those cities. So the impact really has been quite significant. And we really believe that every segment of the industry should be able, again, to reopen, and that it isn't fair not to have clear guidelines. So we hope that the CDC will be able to put forward clear guidelines in the immediate term, because the economic consequences really are significant, not only to Florida, but to the other countries like Alaska, Louisiana, California, Washington, and other states across the country.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Rosen.
Thank you, Senator Scott. I'd like to next recognize via WebEx Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Chair Rosen, and thank you as well to Senator Scott. And I'm really excited to hear from our witnesses today. I know this has been such a tough time for tourism, but having this hearing couldn't be more timely. I have long been involved in this issue from the time that I had the job of chairing the Tourism Subcommittee in Commerce. Proud of the work that we've done together with some of the witnesses on Brand USA. the work that you're doing today. And I guess I'd start there because I know that Senator Rosen asked a question and talked about the loss, at least, of international travel on the MGM resorts and also really everywhere in the country, which is part of the reason we were so proud of the work we've done on Brand USA, which finally allowed us to have an even playing field when it came to promoting our own country. This has been a real gut punch for the tourism industry. Obviously, we had to shut down the borders for international tourists. But as we see this, as we call it on Lake Superior, the lighthouse on the horizon, as opposed to the light at the end of the tunnel, with the vaccine and what's happening. Ms. Barnes, in your testimony, you highlight that if international travel is not reopened soon, a total of 1.1 million American jobs and 262 billion in spending will be lost by the end of 2021. And that temporary emergency funding for Brand USA is needed. Can you talk about what resources you think are needed?
Sure. Thank you, Senator, for your question and for your tremendous leadership as the chair of the Travel and Tourism Caucus in the Senate. We are very grateful for your leadership, in particular, as we sought to reauthorize Brand USA back in late 2019, which feels like a decade ago.
Except you must admit we were smart to do it early. We got it done a year early, thanks to Senator Blunt and other things.
Yes, great for both of you. Thank you. So as I noted, international travel has declined by 76%. And right now we're looking at a 5-year time horizon for recovery. But we know that we can shorten that timeline. And just in the losses for 2021, if we are able to reopen international travel by July, that can stem 40% of the expected losses this year. So we really need Brand USA that is currently having a funding challenge because of the lack of international travel. Usually the ESTA fee is coming in a robust fashion and capped at 100 million, which goes to Brand USA. But because that money isn't coming in, because the international borders are closed, we really need an emergency funding mechanism. What we think is about $250 million in an appropriation. Usually the 100 million that comes in on international fees is matched by the private sector. But unfortunately, due to the decimation of the private sector right now, those matching funds are unlikely to be captured. So again, if the Appropriations Committee could put forward 250 million, we think they'll be able to do their work to bring back international travelers and make sure that that 26-to-1 return on investment is provided. And I'll just note, since we were talking about exports, that in 2019, the tourism industry provided a $59 billion export for the country. So it really is important beyond just domestic funding.
Very good. And then another bill that Senator Blunt and I have introduced, the Protecting Tourism in the United States Act, directs the Commerce Department in consultation with the U.S. Travel and Tourism Board and key federal agencies to develop a plan to help the tourism industry recover, simply because, I think that as things are getting a little better, their ramp up is going to be slower by virtue of the nature of the customers here and where they come from and how they can travel than other industries. And I guess I'll turn to you with this, Mr. Perez. And by the way, I also want to mention the great leadership of Chair Rosen as well as Senator Cortez Masto on these issues with Nevada. But one report found that in 2020, more than 670,000 hotel industry jobs. And in your testimony, you note that MGM Resorts had to furlough 60,000 employees as a result of the pandemic. Can you speak to how long the hotel industry can sustain itself on the current federal economic relief, particularly regarding your workforce?
Thank you very much, Senator, for the question. Look, the employees are coming back, not only in Las Vegas, but also for our regional properties. But they're doing so when the customers have started to come back. What we've seen clearly as vaccinations, shots in arms are becoming more and more pervasive, Things have turned around relatively quickly. The question for us is how sustainable is that? Because it happened as, we were leaving the winter, if you will, entering better weather, and along with the stimulus. So there's a little bit of noise, but the way this is, and I apologize. I apologize. Can you repeat the question for a second? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it was just, it's okay, because I'm probably out of time, and my colleagues are probably glad that you forgot the question. No,
Yeah,
it was
I
just
lost my train of
mostly
thought.
about, it was mostly about how long the hotel industry can sustain itself.
Yeah. So, and what I'll say, and I'll just end it really, really quickly. And it right now it is a bit of a challenge, particularly in Las Vegas and a few of our other regional properties, to find labor for the reasons mentioned earlier. And as our customers return, we feel that with time we can get our employees back and do this in the right form and right fashion. So, but it's a process. It's a process.
Exactly. Very good. And we hope you're working as well with Carlson companies in Minnesota. We're proud of the work they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Next, I'd like to recognize in person Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate this committee. I think it's exciting. I think it's going to be an important committee, very bipartisan, all these issues, and looking forward to your and Senator Scott's leadership on this. Ms. Barnes, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned my Visit America Act, which is very bipartisan with Senator Schatz and Senator King. One thing it would do, it would establish an Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Travel and Tourism. As you and I have discussed, many countries have cabinet officials in charge of tourism. We don't even have an Assistant Secretary. Now, I'm not a big government guy, but as you know, when you're in the debates within the federal agencies, you need someone, Senate confirmed, to stand up for this huge part of our economy, which goes across so many states. Can you share with me a little bit of your perspective of the importance of this act? It passed out of this committee very strongly. Every senator but one voted for it. We're going to try and move it again quickly this year.
Yes, thank you for your question and for your leadership on this issue. You're right. We're the only one of the top 30 global destinations that doesn't have a cabinet level person and or an arm that actually goes out and promotes travel. That's why we have Brand USA. So we believe very much that the leadership is needed. We've been very pleased with Secretary Raimondo's interest in how important travel and tourism is to the industry, but obviously she has many things to focus on. So we couldn't agree with you more that we'd like to see your bill introduced again quickly and passed. And we've already also raised with the Secretary the importance of elevating this position. So hopeful that we'll be able to move it forward. It's also something that we've talked to the Travel and Tourism Advisory Board at the National Travel and Tourism Office at the Department of Commerce about, and believe that with this type of leadership to really be able to draw that interagency group together, that we can set that national strategy to reopen not only domestic travel, but bring back international travel, bring back meetings and events. We need the whole of the industry focused upon, and having a cabinet level position would absolutely help do that.
Great, thank you. My next question is for you and Ms. Dover. I want to talk a little bit about the cruise ship industry, and you know, a lot of times the industry gets attacked for certain issues, but what I really want to talk about is how important this industry is to small businesses, whether in Florida or in Alaska. And if you can give us a sense on that, but also, Ms. Barnes, I saw that the U.S. Travel Association recently called for the CDC to end its ban on cruise ship travel in America. That's what our bill, Senator Scott and my bill, the Cruise Act that we introduced today, would do. And they need the guidance. And look, the CDC does a good job on the science. They've had a tough year, an important agency. My state has worked hard dealing with the health issues. We've been the #1 state in the country throughout the pandemic in terms of testing per capita, in terms of the vaccination rates per capita. We're proud of that in Alaska. Fortunately, one of the lowest death rates per capita. But my state's economy is getting crushed. Oil and gas,